Hi, my name is Shirley, and I'm a professor at the Lynch School of Education and Human Development at Boston College in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. I'm with you today to discuss a new book I've written with Andy Hargraves. It's called The Age of Identity. Who do our kids think they are, and how can we help them belong? Now, please notice in the title of this book that the authors, Andy and me with our editors, spent a long time thinking about who do our kids think they are. That requires us to all step back a moment and to ask ourselves, not what is my perception as the adult, but who do the kids think they are? So in this book, we provide lots of practical examples of things that teachers can do to work with their students' identities. We provide guidelines, we provide principles, we provide practical strategies that you can do because issues of identity will come up with your class. If you're a kindergarten teacher, you may have had a student say to you, "What are white people?" They might wonder, why am I the only person in the class that has two mommies or two daddies? They'll kind of bring up every kind of subject under the sun, and this provides an opportunity, if our states and our districts can allow this, to engage in conversations with students about all the different kinds of ways of being in the world. Let's just take one example. In this book, we studied 10 school districts in Ontario. Ontario is largely an English-speaking province. There's a tiny French-speaking minority in Ontario. And guess what? That tiny French-speaking minority is now welcoming in French-speaking students from all over the world. So imagine that. You are already a linguistic minority, and now you're not just going to have your traditional French-Canadian culture, but there's going to be a French-speaking culture from all over the world. So what can educators do in situations like that? Well, the educators that we studied used it as an opportunity for studying countries all over the world. They used it as an opportunity for teaching about different kinds of French. You may not know it, but there's many different varieties of French spoken all over the world, just like many different varieties of English. And in some places, it's hard to understand people even though you're speaking the same language. So what educators did in this district is they decided they wanted every child to be welcomed in their school. Didn't matter what their race was, didn't matter what the parental background was, didn't matter what the gender orientation of the child was. And they called this a process of cultural animation, of awakening the culture in each of the children. It did matter to the educators that the students loved the French language, that they embraced it, that they saw it as an important part of their identity. So that's simply one example. You could choose other examples that we describe in the book, which is in Canada, they use the expression Indigenous students more. We might say Native Americans here in the US, but things that educators are trying to do as they serve Indigenous students who are living on reservations or living in cities, and where the culture was radically fractured by a residential boarding school system to which students were sent and were stripped of their language and their culture. So what educators are doing in Ontario and in a number of provinces and districts across Ontario now is they're trying to figure out how can we learn from Indigenous knowledge systems with relationship to survival skills, cosmologies, ways of thinking about human growth and potential. How can we do all of those things? And this raises different kinds of questions that teachers can tap into. If you read some of the research by Cindy Blackstock in Ontario, it's an important part of Indigenous knowledge to not just ask, what's my identity as an individual, but also to go back 7 generations. Where do I come from? And where is my identity going through? There's a much stronger collective sense of identity than we have in many Western, more individualistic cultures. So the book is full of examples. Some of them are surprising, some of them are funny, some of them are dead serious, where we see educators getting into the nitty-gritty of trying to address issues of students' identities and in the process exploring their own identities so the students can see this is part of just human development. People go through many different stages in their life. Their personalities unfold in sometimes surprising and provocative ways, and they can feel comfortable with their different identities, which I hope that we all feel is an aspiration for every single one of our students as we build an education system that truly welcomes and encourages all of them. Thank you for your time.